Hey guys, welcome to another Summer Sippin episode. If you are joining me, thank you for being here. If you're watching this recorded, thanks for watching. That's awesome of you to go back and watch this recorded session. If you are not familiar with the Summer Sippin series, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing. So I am with William Chris Vineyards. My name is Kelsey Renee also. I am educating this summer about all things Texas wine. So on the shop page at williamchriswines.com, you can buy a 4-pack called Summer Sippin', and it includes 4 bottles of wine. And you drink those over the course of 4 weeks. We talk about Texas wine. Last week, we talked about how wine grape varieties come to be. And we went back 9,000 years where the first evidence of vineyard cultivation was found in Southwest Asia, how the grapes went around to Greece and Crete, and then to Italy, and then to Spain, and then up to France, and then over across the seas to the US, and ultimately how grape varieties come to be. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, because today's topic is hybrid grapes. So before I tell you too much about what hybrid grapes are, you should have a bottle of wine with you. If it is the bottle of wine called 2019 Blanc Dubois from William Chris Vineyards, that's what you should put in your glass. If you don't have that wine, you should go get another bottle of wine, a glass of brandy. I don't care what it is. Put something in a glass and sip on it while we're talking. So we're going to have about 45 minutes, maybe a little bit more than that, of just some good Texas wine education. So get something in the glass. I have to say hi to everybody who's been watching. Post in the comments where you're calling from. Tell me whether you've been watching, whether you're new to this series, whether someone bought you a pack and gifted it to you and how awesome that was, whether you're going to go do that for somebody else. Tell me all about what your situation is. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what my week was like. So yesterday, I was setting up for this Summer Sippin' series, and I broke my Blanc Dubois bottle. It fell on top of my beautiful decanter that I demoed last week. Remember, I had that kind of plate that I set on top of my decanter so that I could double decant. Completely broke it. It's also discontinued, so I can't go get another one, which means I will be on the hunt for my next best beautiful decanter. And I have a hunch it might be one of the 2 decanters that we carry at William Chris Vineyards. We have that wonderful breather that you can pop the breather on top of the wine bottle and turn it upside down, and it kind of waterfalls down. Or we have, if I'm going to splurge on myself, we have this beautiful, I call it a swan decanter, but it's basically a big loop, and you can pour the wine in either way, and it's gorgeous. It has like a big hole up here and then a teeny hole that you pour from. Super cool. I can't demo that today. And I also can't drink the Blanc Dubois with you. So I'm going to be drinking something else completely different. I'm going to open up what I'm drinking and tell you about it after I tell you to talk to me in the comments. I have my computer right here, so I'm going to be looking over to see if you have any questions. I see everyone's shocked about me breaking everything. I am going to go ahead and blame my dog on that one, tripping me. She's a big old 95-pound Pit Lab mix, and she just got really excited and destroyed my wine. But I think she licked a little off the floor, so hopefully she got something great off of it. We have a couple people in Florida, Round Rock, Lago Vista, Tennessee. Awesome. I love that. Dan and Karen in Denver. Nice to see y'all again. And I know y'all have been watching. And Montgomery. Is that in Texas, Brian? And that's okay if you weren't able to get the Blanc Dubois. As long as you're drinking something, I'm happy. But you can still go back and get the Summer Sippin' pack if you'd like to have all the wines for the next 2 weeks as well. So next week, we're going to be drinking this, the Artist Blend. So I want you to come prepared with that. If you watched last week, you may have seen me do a little experiment where I had 3 glasses of wine and a decanter. And and I opened the Texas High Plains Mervet, the 2018 Texas High Plains Mervet. I poured 2 ounces in one glass. I decanted 2 ounces and poured that in the second glass. And I double decanted and poured that in the third glass. I would love if y'all would do that for the artist blend next week. But this week, super simple. Have your Blanc Dubois chilled down and let's drink some wine. So I'm drinking something a little special this week. Does anyone remember this bottle of Mervet Carignan Rosé that we ran out of super fast last summer? Well, that's when I had just started at William Chris, and I bought myself a couple bottles, and I've been holding on to this one for basically an entire year. So I figured if I was going to have an awful week where I'm breaking all of my wine and decanters, I should just go ahead and indulge myself and drink this wine. So it's been aging for a year under my bed. I actually completely forgot that I had it. This is what's beautiful about wine. You forget what you have. This doesn't need to be aged any longer. Probably could. It has high acidity. I think it could age for a little longer. But this screw cap on top is a sign to me that maybe it's delicious drunk young. It doesn't need to be aged. And anytime you see a Stelvin enclosure, I know they can be a little controversial. That's a sign that you can drink your wine young, and that's going to optimize its freshness. But I do like to age my my wines that are sealed with a Stelvin enclosure, just to kind of see what happens to them, because there is no oxygen getting in there, but the wine is still transforming in the bottle, just in a different way. So I'm sorry y'all can't taste this with me, but I do want to make a little bit of a point and say, if you love something at William Chris, you should expect it not to last, because many other people are loving it as well. So if you've tried our new Sanso Rosé, go get some of that, because that's going to run out. If you loved that Roussan, that's going to run out pretty quick. If you loved the, whatever else we've tasted this past couple of weeks, go get yourself some. Luckily, we always have specials for you, and I just want to share a couple of those, and I'll just let y'all read these. These are the specials that we have going on right now, so I want you to go look on the website and see if they're available there. But know you are always welcome to email me if you want me to ship you something. And the good thing is with each of these, you get shipping included. So tell me how much you want one shipped. This has also been aging for a year, but I did something really cool with this. If you'll notice, there's only this much wine left in here. It's also not open. I Coravined this a year ago, and I have been leaving this much free space in here for an entire year to see what happens. And if you're not familiar with the Coravin, this has argon gas in it and a medical grade needle. You put it on top, push it in, grab a glass, hear that little hiss that's really nice and satisfying, and you can pour yourself however much of the wine that you want. And then you undo this and to expel out the extra liquid. And it is still sealed. Now today I'm going to open this and see what happened to it. So I'm just doing a little bit of experimentation. And I hope that y'all aren't too sad that I'm drinking these without y'all. But to be fair, y'all have the Blanc Dubois and I don't. And I was really looking forward to that. So I love my Coravin because even though I did drink 4 glasses of this a year ago, I didn't want to finish that last little bit. I also didn't want to toss it, and I didn't have to. Often I'm drinking wine by myself, and y'all know I'm not a big drinker already, so this has been a really essential tool for me. If you'd like one, I can send you one. They usually go between $200 and $600 because there are several models. I think this one was between $200 and $300. So this is one of the more basic models, but it does everything you need. Just know that you'll never have to throw away a half-finished bottle of wine again. I don't know if that ever happens to y'all, but it's cool with the Stelvin enclosure too. They give you a cap. You can unseal it, seal it back on, and there's a membrane that you can push the medical grade needle through. So you can do this with all of your wines except for sparkling, because that would just be weird. So tell me how much y'all are enjoying the Blanc Dubois. I'm going to sit and enjoy these, and just I'll tell you a little bit about them as we go along and sip. But I have to look at y'all's comments now. I missed everyone. We have more people viewing this week, which is awesome. Tell me if you're new to this. I'm really excited to see so many people here. And feel free, if you've never been to William Chris Vineyards or heard of William Chris Vineyards, shoot me an email and I'd love to just tell you a little bit about what makes William Chris special. You can also read about what makes William Chris special in this book, and I highly recommend it to everyone. Sorry, my lights are catching this. So it's just a great summary of the vineyards in Texas, what's happening in Texas. William Chris Vineyard has a little presence in here as well. I love this book, and a lot of what we're talking about, I have gotten information from this book. And they discuss a lot of states in the southwest of Texas that are growing grapes and making excellent wine. All right. Oh, Francisco, thanks for watching. Francisco is your tasting room ambassador at William Chris Vineyards, who you went and had a tasting with, and then went home and was like, wow, that was the best tasting I've ever been through in my entire life. So everyone say hi to Francisco. Let's see who else is joining. Lots of people. Thanks for talking to me, guys. I love reading y'all's comments here. And I hope while I'm reading these, it gives y'all time to like stretch and drink some wine and get ready for some deep, good information. Christopher, nice to see you. Rachel, I hope you're there somewhere. Yeah, there you are. Oh, you're going to drink a rosé with me. That's awesome. Okay, I'm so excited to stick my nose in this glass because it's been so long. Oh, and it's changed so much. So the aromatics used to fill the entire glass. Now they've dropped down and they're a little bit more subtle. The fruit has really come out on this wine. I remember when I first smelled this, it was so savory, gamey, which is what made it beautiful. If you watched last week, you had Merved, and that's the major grape in this. If you watched the first week, you had a Cinsault and Carignan blend. So you've had Carignan before as well. So this is a blend of those two grapes. And what makes this rosé awesome is we're not using naturally fruity grapes for this. We're using naturally very savvy, spice-driven grapes for this beautiful rosé. So it's kind of a cornerstone to the very almost sweet, really, really fruity kind of like it. You smell it and you get a headache immediately. I mean, I love those sometimes, don't get me wrong, but this is just a nice balancer for that. And then this Tannat from High Estate is the best Tannat that I have ever had. And it's from one of the best vintages we had, 2017. It has lost nothing. It is aromatic. It has that tobacco. It has a lot of fruit. If you're just joining, I see a lot of y'all joining just now. Put something in the glass, anything. I don't care what it is. Oh, tannin. And Tannat is based on the word tannin. Over time in the bottle, usually you would lose some of that tannin. It hasn't lost any of it. It is grippy. It is just scrumptious tannin. Okay, tell me about the Blanc Dubois, how awesome it is. I cannot taste it with you guys, unfortunately, but I hope y'all have some nice like mozzarella and basil or pasta or spicy Thai food to go along with this. Tell me about what beautiful foods you put together for tonight. Corey, I'll pass along to John your message. Catherine, good to see you from San Antonio. I bet you live right down the street from me. Yes, Kristen, pear notes in the wine. So Blanc Dubois is a really, really interesting grape. And we're going to talk a lot more about it today, of course, as we talk about hybrid grapes. But pear notes, palmaceous notes are something that it is definitely known for. Apple as well, and then citrus and lemongrass. And that's what I get out of the William Chris Vineyards Blanc Dubois. At least that's what I remember getting out of it. I want you to notice with the Blanc Dubois, it has a cork. So there's oxygen getting to the wine slowly, which is very different than something like the Mary Ruth, which has a screw cap. The Blanc Dubois can stand up to a little bit of oxygen. So this wine will develop in the glass. So will the Mary Ruth, but maybe the Blanc Dubois has more potential to develop in the glass or over time. All right, Asia's drinking some Zinot Mavre with steak and eggplant. I will not say shame on you for that. That sounds delicious and awesome. And Laura, you have 2013 Blanc Dubois? That's so cool. I love that. Blanc Dubois could be so ageable. And I haven't really tested this out, but what I know about Blanc Dubois is it tends to not build up a ton of sugar. It tends to instead have high acidity. When you have high acidity, it can be kind of sharp and pointy when the wine is young, but as you age it, the acidity holds the wine for longer. So the acidity will mellow down and become balanced in the wine theoretically. And because we're making awesome Blanc Dubois that's very complex and high quality, you should have a really rewarding change of flavor compounds over time. So I hope that when you open one of those bottles, you'll send me some pictures. Please do, because that just sounds really, really cool. All right, so I've gone off topic already, man. I'm just as scatterbrained as last week, which is going to be great because it means we're going to talk about a lot of things. It's going to be really exciting. Forgive me if I reference Harry Potter a lot tonight because I've been rereading the books. So you may find some Harry Potter metaphors creeping into the wine discussion today. We'll see. We will see. So I wanted to just tell y'all that the Harvest Dinner is sold out. So if you were hoping to go to that, go to the Grape Punch instead. So for 2 years, we were not able to do the Grape Punch, but now we are. So for 3 weekends, 3 Saturdays in August, we are doing the Grape Punch. And what this is you guys come in and push the cap down on the red wine that we're making. And the cap is all the skin and solid stuff that floats to the top of whatever the wine is aging in. All the juice is on bottom. The solid stuff goes to the top. To extract beautiful color out of the red wine, we need to push it down. That's called a punch down. When you push it down, it helps kind of stir everything. You get a more even texture. You also get more color out of the wine. So you guys can help with that. It is a ton of fun to do. I've never done this at William Chris because, I started a year ago, but I've done it at other wineries, and it's just the most fun. So you can be a winemaker too. So if you are a member, your tickets are $20. If you're a non-member, your tickets are $30. If you would like to become a member and get a $20 ticket, email me. So you get a t-shirt with that. And you should also pick up a picnic pack because the sessions are around 3:00. So there's plenty of time for an awesome picnic pack made by our chef, Josh Ty, that you can go and get. If you wanted to become a part of the Magnum Club and you weren't able to last week, shoot me an email and I'll hook you up with that as well. And I want to answer Darby's question from last week. And Darby, I'm so sorry that I missed it. I saw it as soon as I logged off of this. So Darby's question was about the Timmins Mourvèdre. That is a single vineyard Mourvèdre that she is particularly fond of, and how that's different than the 2018 Texas High Plains Mourvèdre that we drank last week. And the answer is how it was aged. It also has to do with the age of the vineyard and the soil type, of course. Timmins Estate is very different from other vineyards around it. But the major difference is, first, how long the aging was, and second, the vessel that the wine was aged in. So the Timmins Estate Mourvèdre was made in a Roble style, and I know you know that. Roble means oak, and this is a traditional style of winemaking that's used in Spain that basically uses very little time in oak. Even though Roble, and there's just a bug that wants to get at my wine. I know Roble means oak, but we're talking very little oak. So we did 8 months of aging in large oak fermenters. And what's important about large oak fermenters is the surface area of wine that's in contact with the outside of the vessel. That's the only part of the wine that is getting contact from oxygen, because our oak fermenters are porous. If you, for instance, take that same wine and put it into a small oak barrel, there is more wine getting to the sides of the barrel and getting in contact with oxygen than is not getting in contact with oxygen. So with large oak fermenters, you have less oxygen contact to the wine. And I hope that made sense the way I said that. When you use small oak barrels, you get more oxygenation of the wine. With the Timmins Estate Mourvèdre, we did only large oak fermenters for 8 months. With the Texas High Plains Mourvèdre, there was a combination of large oak fermenters, small oak barrels, some stainless steel, and I think even some concrete as well. So we did a big combination so that you got layers and layers of texture and flavor. And that was the goal with that wine. Whereas the Timmins Estate was meant to shine in a singular fashion. The other big difference is the large oak fermenter that was used for the Timmins Estate Mourvèdre was a second use oak fermenter. And it takes about 3 uses for oak barrel to no longer impart any flavor. So you did get some flavor off that barrel, but certainly not the most amount that you could have gotten. And with the Texas High Plains Mourvèdre, there was 25% new oak. So you got maybe more spice character out of the Texas High Plains Mourvèdre. And I hope that helped answer your question. It's a combination of things always, but Roble style is, the difference in the amount of time that we aged was 12 months. 12 months makes a big, big difference. So the Texas High Plains Mourvèdre got just a lot more time with oxygen before it was bottled. Mary had an excellent note that she wanted to pop in the comments last week. Mary had said that someone was drinking the Lost Draw Mourvèdre, and she wanted to point out to everybody that Lost Draw Cellars is a winery that William Chris Vineyards is directly partnered with. And this happened this past year. It's a partnership that's been in the works for a long time. Lost Draw Cellars makes also 100% Texas wine, getting grapes from only Texas. Lost Draw Cellars makes a Lost Draw Vineyards Mourvèdre, just like William Chris Vineyards makes a Lost Draw Vineyards Mourvèdre. So you can actually do a direct comparison of those two wines by going onto our shop page and picking up some of those bottles. That is a really, really fun comparison. And if you're saying to yourself, Lost Draw Cellars and Lost Draw Vineyards sounds like the same thing, Andy Timmins is the uncle of Andrew Sides, who started Lost Draw Cellars. So they do have a relationship. Andy Timmins is a manager and owner of Lost Draw Vineyards, and Andrew Sides, his nephews, started Lost Draw Cellars. So they do have a relationship and a correlation there. All right, shall we get on to talking about hybrid grapes? Do you have any other questions before we start? Awesome. I'm glad to see a lot of y'all have tickets for the Grape Punch already. All right. So the wine that you're drinking today is the Blanc Dubois. We made 72 cases of this wine. There was not a lot of this wine made. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you where the grapes are coming from. If you see the little stars, they're in the Texas Hill Country and right outside of the Texas Hill Country. You have 2 vineyards that this wine is coming from. The first is Rummage Vineyards. This is in the Texas Hill Country AVA. And the second is Whistling Duck Vineyards. And this is outside of the Texas Hill Country AVA. And I want you to notice on your Blanc Dubois, it says Blanc Dubois, and underneath that it says Texas. Now, you know there's new legislation out that says that if you have a Texas AVA, a single vineyard site, or a county on the label, all the grapes must come from within Texas. But if you have just Texas on the label, 25% of your grapes are actually able to come from outside of Texas. This legislation that passed was in the works for 6 years. There were 3 legislative sessions that sat in order to discuss this legislation. There's a group called the Texas Wine Growers that Chris Brundrett, our co-founder, is a spokesperson for. They are a group of 11 now wineries that are dedicated to using only 100% Texas grapes in their wines. They were pushing for this legislation to include all Texas grapes all the time. If you had Texas anywhere on the label, all of your grapes must come from Texas. There was pushback because Texas is extremely difficult to grow grapes in. It's tough to get all of your grapes from Texas, especially in the difficult vintages like 2013, 2014. Chris Brundrett and the Texas Wine Growers say that it is possible. So after many legislative sessions, after a lot of discussion, years and years of discussion, they came to a compromise. And the compromise was if you have a county, an AVA, or a single vineyard site, on a label from within Texas, 100% of your grapes must come from within Texas. But it's called declassify. If you declassify your wine to just have Texas on the label, you can have some wiggle room, and 25% of your grapes can come from outside of Texas. You can still make delicious wine this way, but it's very different from, the purpose of William Chris Vineyards, which is to make 100% delicious Texas wine. So this compromise was put into place finally, so that when you are buying Texas wine, there is a single vineyard on here. You know that all of your grapes are coming from Texas. And this is what's important. We are raising the quality of Texas wines and giving you an idea of what just Texas is able to produce. Now, the Blanc Dubois says Texas on the label, but guess what? All of your grapes are coming from Texas. William Chris Vineyards, even though we have the wiggle room to use grapes from outside of Texas legally, because we have only Texas on the label, we will only use Texas grapes. And Lost Straw Cellars is part of the Texas Wine Growers Association as well. So both dedicated still to 100% Texas grapes, but the labeling does give others some wiggle room if they should want that. Now, the reason we have to put Texas on the labels and we can't put Texas Hill Country on the label is because Whistling Duck Vineyards is outside of the Texas Hill Country. So we legally cannot put Texas Hill Country AVA on the label. Why would we source grapes from outside an AVA? And if you watched the first episode about geography, where we talked about each of these AVAs in Texas, I said it many times, you will not find quality grapes only within the AVAs. You'll find quality grapes growing all over Texas. The brown areas that you see on this map are the legally defined areas for where grapes are generally growing in Texas, but it doesn't mean there aren't exceptional grapes growing from outside of that. So Whistling Duck Vineyards is growing Blanc Dubois outside of Texas Hill Country AVA. This is important because most of the Blanc Dubois that's growing in Texas is growing outside of any AVA. And this is because it is a hybrid grape that was created to be Pierce's disease resistant. We talked about Pierce's disease. This is a major threat in Texas. And I'm going to show you a map to show you where Pierce's disease is a threat in Texas, because this is going to directly tie into what we're going to talk about today. So the red is a zone of extremely high Pierce's disease probability. Yellow is you're probably going to get Pierce's disease on your vines. Green on this map is no evidence of Pierce's disease. So this is where the Texas High Plains is. This is where a lot of grapes are growing. This is important because Blanc Dubois is resistant to Pierce's disease. So where you're seeing Blanc Dubois grown is in that red area, close to the Gulf, where it's really humid, where you get tons of those bugs that are carrying Pierce's disease. These are things like sharpshooters. And I want you to picture mosquitoes. When you walk outside right now in Texas, how many mosquitoes land on top of you? As you get closer to Houston and Galveston, how many more mosquitoes land on top of you? It's the same thing with the bugs that spread Pierce's disease. So to have a Pierce's disease resistant grape variety in Texas is a big deal. It opens up that red area for us to grow exceptional quality grapes. And this is what Blanc Dubois is known for. It was created from, many grapes having babies together for the purpose of producing high quality, very tasty wine that is also Pierce's disease resistant. We also got the extra bonus that it is frost resistant, so it can actually be successful in the Texas High Plains as well. If you watched a couple episodes and we talked about grafting, we're going to talk more about grafting today, just lightly. You graft your vines in order to help the vine succeed in American soil because it has its own set of issues, diseases. Texas, again, is a hard place to grow grapes in, but it's certainly possible with techniques like grafting. So grafting your grapes can help accommodate the grapes in American soil a little bit better. Blanc Dubois largely does not need to be grafted unless it's on highly alkaline soil, but that's a different conversation. So you have own rooted, ungrafted Blanc Dubois vines in your bottle today, which is super cool. We had that with the Tempranillo from Par Vineyards as well. All right, that is enough screen sharing for you today. That was all the maps that I have for you. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to share that. Not like it was private, but all right. I'm going to see if y'all had any questions about what I just spoke about. Will William Chris be at the Grapevine Grape Fest this year celebrating Texas wines? I don't know, Terry, but if you're celebrating Texas wines, I'm going to guess there's a high possibility of that, but I'm not sure. I'll have to ask, and I will get back to you on that and let you know next week at the very latest. Lindsay, when can you buy William Chris Blanc Dubois? Today, you can go to williamchriswines.com and get your bottle there. If they don't have the Blanc Dubois single bottle on the website, you can order it through me or you can call. And I don't know why it keeps showing different people's comments. If you ever can't find something on the website that you want to buy, give me a call, give me an email, call the vineyard. We always have more available for you. But the Blanc Dubois is in that summer Sippin pack if you'd like to just get the whole pack. Make sure you buy 2 extra bottles because then shipping's included and you're basically getting a bottle of wine for free. All right. So I didn't mention the Blanc Dubois is aged for 8 months in neutral oak barrels. There is no new oak on this. You shouldn't get any of that cinnamon spice. You should just get bright fruits, aromatic intensity, things like lemongrass, which I really love. All right. So now we're getting into the tough stuff. I talked last week about, let's have a sip of wine first before we get into this, huh? So we talked last week about wine grapes. What's in my glass, not yours, is generally Vitis vinifera. This is commonly known as the European wine grape variety. We have 99% Vitis vinifera planted in Texas, which means 1% is your other stuff. This includes hybrid grapes. This includes Concord grapes, stuff that you would find at the grocery store. Vitis vinifera is the most common wine grape used around the world. This ties back to that conversation we had about 9,000 years ago in Southwest Asia. We found the first evidence of vineyard cultivation. We had grapes having babies with each other and being domesticated so that we came out with consistently high quality grape varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Roussanne, Chardonnay, Viognier. All of those are grape varieties. So that's when we started to see that emergence. Then the grapes spread around the world, basically. And very recently, we have seen the birth of hybrid grapes. And this is when you have one species within the Vitis genus having a baby with another species within the Vitis genus. Now, I'm going to explain that a little bit further because we're getting very sciencey right now. And even you guys can tell that I'm a little rough on the science. I know the principle, but I'm going to help share it with you. So your hybrid grapes are Vitis something crossed with something else Vitis. So, for example, this could be a Vitis vinifera grape, which is your European wine grape, crossed with Vitis labrusca, which is an American grape variety. Now, American wine grapes were present in Texas for a very long time before Vitis vinifera came over here. In fact, wine grapes were planted in Texas 100 years before they were planted in California. And these were American grapes. American grapes can be made into wine, but they tend to be a little tough, very funky, very earthy. They are often called foxy. And so Vitis labrusca is often called the fox grape because it has a foxy aroma to it. Now, there was a vine louse that spread around the world after Vitis vinifera came over to the US. This was a vine louse that was present in America that went over to Europe after the Europeans started coming over here. That vine louse destroyed a ton of grapes. Like 90% of grapes in France were demolished by this vine louse. At this time, there was a man named T.V. Munson who did a bunch of research on American grape species and found a cure to this. Sorry, it's not a cure, it's a way to prevent it. So there's no way to cure phylloxera once it has destroyed your grapes. The vineyards are going to be demolished. But he found that if you graft the top of a European grapevine to an American rootstock, the American rootstock is resistant to this vine louse called phylloxera. So 70% of grapes around the world, vines are planted on Texas rootstock. This means that Texas is taking over the entire world, but it's something that people don't often talk about. Even in France, you see a lot of grafted vines grafted onto Texas rootstock. And this is the only way these vineyards can have a surety that they will survive, because phylloxera is still out there. There is no cure to it. At this time, there was tons of research on American grape varieties, and T.V. Munson came up with a huge register for all of the American grape varieties that currently exist. He also created some hybrids. He did some crossing of these American grape species with European grape species and tested to see what the outcome was. And certainly the American rootstock that is used is called Champanelle. That is the most common grafting vine. It is actually a hybrid rootstock that has some properties of Vitis vinifera and some properties of American vine. So what we're seeing around the world is a combination of European grape varieties married with others. And the way I wanted to explain this was, when you're creating a hybrid grape, you are making a hippogriff. You are taking an eagle and crossing it with a horse, and you're getting a hybrid creature. When you are crossing two Vitis vinifera species together, you are crossing a dog with a dog, and you're getting a mutt, if that makes sense. You get properties of the DNA from both grapes, and you still create something that is similar, but has a different DNA makeup. And I hope that makes sense. And I'll give you an example. Cabernet Sauvignon is a crossing between Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc. Those are the parent grapes of Cabernet Sauvignon. The parent grapes of Blanc Dubois are a couple different things. You have 4 different Vitis species creating Blanc Dubois, and that is why it is a hybrid. That is why it has beautiful, wonderful, almost European-like flavor compounds and complexity, with that really true American resistance to certain diseases and hardiness through frost. And this is why hybrid grapes come to be. Now, unfortunately, the American grapes that were being used in Texas at the beginning of its wine journey were largely pulled up due to prohibition. All of that research that T.V. Munson did, he wouldn't be able to do today, because 99% of Texas is now planted with that European grape species called Vitis vinifera. We saw American grapes completely pulled up in favor of these complex, wonderful, beautiful, intense grapes of the Vitis vinifera species. And this happened after Prohibition. We lost a ton of hybrid grapes and American varieties in favor of these European grape varieties. Hybrids are coming back. There's not a lot of information out there, but I want to shout out to Jim Comas with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension in Fredericksburg, and to our educational director, Clay Roop. So Clay put together a fantastic field to the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension in Fredericksburg, and Jim Comas was our host. There is where I learned everything I know about hybrid grapes, which still isn't much, but is definitely growing. I got to see the experimentation that Texas A&M is putting into making Texas plants more hardy. They're finding out how to grow raspberries in Texas. They're creating hybrids of all sorts of crops. It's, blackberries, corn, wheat, pear trees. And then at the end of this, we got to see the grape varieties that they are cultivating. These are hybrids of Vitis vinifera species with American species. And they have tons of experimentation here. All the grapes that they have created hybrids of and are planting don't even have names yet, because they're still doing research on whether they are completely viable in Texas. And when I say viable, I mean when you create a crossing or a hybrid, you don't know what you're getting. So take Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance. When the Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc had their little baby, it was a combination of the DNA from both species. If Sauvignon Blanc was crossed with Cabernet Franc again, it would not create the same thing. It would create something different. And if you have kids, you know, all of your kids aren't exactly alike. You took you and your husband or whoever and had a baby, that second baby, third baby is not going to be the same baby as the first one. This is exactly how grape varieties are. That was a really interesting metaphor, wasn't it? I just came up with that, so you're welcome. This is how grape varieties are. Blanc Dubois was created as, it's a little bit of a toss up in the air. We think that these two grape varieties will have a hybrid baby together that will be successful, but oftentimes it's not successful. And what the Texas AgriLife Extension Group is doing in Fredericksburg is just testing and retesting and retesting and retesting. They are waiting 3 years after their hybrid grape is planted in ground before they even get any fruit. And then they are making wine from that fruit in the most basic style possible to see what they're getting. Are they getting complexity? Are they getting intensity of flavors? What kind of flavors are they getting? Are they rewarding enough to continue working with this hybrid grape? And that doesn't even get into whether, there was a frost that year and the grape survived in the temperature fluctuation. Often these hybrid grapes are not successful, but a couple of times they are. We're going to talk about 2 hybrid grapes that are very successful in Texas, and they are Blanc Dubois and Black Spanish. I'm going to have a sip of wine before we get into these hybrid grapes, and see if y'all had any questions, because I talked for a very long time and I didn't see any of y'all's comments. Thank you, Alan, for reminding me to drink. I think we've seen every single week. I really like to talk or try and explain what I'm explaining like I am now, and I just forget to drink the wine. I love this. I want to point out that I have the same glass for both of these. This glass is called the One Glass. It is for the purpose of drinking sparkling wine, white wine, rosé, and red wine out of the same glass. And it's working for me in both ways. Terry, I think it was you last week that asked me about the Roble style. I'm sorry, I said Darby. How are y'all liking the Blanc Dubois? Who's actually doing the Blanc Dubois tonight? I saw a couple people, but I think Karen, I knew someone was going to ask that question. Karen asked me, what grapes were crossed to get Blanc Dubois? This is an excellent question that I cannot answer, and nobody can answer. We're still doing studies on things like this. So Blanc Dubois is, we know that it's a crossing of 4 different species, all within the Vitis genus. But this was only discovered because of DNA testing. It was kind of an accidental hybrid that was found in the wilderness. And we thought that it was Vitis vinifera crossed with something else. And through DNA testing, we found that there were actually 2 more species that had been crossed in as well. So it's a big mixed bag that was discovered. I don't know who crossed the path of Blanc Dubois. I don't know that we have that history or evidence anywhere, but we do not know exactly what the variety is. What I can tell you is that the Vitis vinifera variety is most likely in the orange muscat family. And the muscat family is, think of Moscato, but don't think of sweet. Muscat grapes are a family of grapes that all typically have a floral aroma. This is why it is often made into a sweet wine in Italy with the grape Moscato, is because floral characters often go well with a little bit of sugar or a lot of sugar. But Muscat is grown in many places around the world, creating floral characteristics in sparkling wines, dry wines, semi-sweet, sweet, and even dessert-style wines that are fortified with extra alcohol. So with this huge family of grapes, you have tons of potential. You also have several different ways that you can make these wines. And so orange muscat, it is, I don't know if it's proven, but that is often what Blanc Dubois is related to. So you have a grape in the muscat family that was hybrided with 3 other species over time. So in your Blanc Dubois, you may be getting some floral characters. Rose is often what it's associated with, and that is probably some DNA left over from that muscat crossing. Muscat, by the way, is super popular in Texas. This is a European grape family. We are seeing different varieties of muscat all over Texas, but that's something we'll talk about in 2 weeks when we drink the Mary Ruth, that lovely floral wine that has some muscat in it. Tracy, if you need the 1 glass, I can absolutely hook you up with that. Brian, I'm glad y'all are drinking the Blanc Dubois. I love this wine because it is tart, yes. It's only about 10% alcohol, but it is so aromatic and flavorful. It has intensity. And as we talk about Blanc Dubois and Black Spanish, we're also going to talk about how hybrid grapes are kind of the Harry Potter reference here, mudbloods of the wine world. They have a bad rap because they are not pure European grape variety. But then I go to remind everyone that 70% of grapes in the world are on Texas rootstocks. So why do hybrid grapes have such a bad rap? And this goes back to the tradition. Pure European grape varieties used in wine is the tradition for such a long time that hybrid grape varieties being the new hot thing is not going over so extremely well. In really traditional places like France, hybrid grapes are actually banned. But this is our benefit. We do not legally restrict in Texas what materials you can use, what types of grapes you can use, what the winemaking process needs to be like for any of our wines. And traditional places like Spain, Italy, France, Greece, Austria, Germany, all these places have legal restrictions around how you are actually able to treat your grapes, what grapes you can actually use. I mean, if you remember last week, I talked about Bandol in France. Legally, you must use 50% Mourvèdre, which is great for them. They're making delicious Mourvèdres. But in Texas, we can have experimentation. And this is because we're young. This legislation that just passed about the labeling laws of Texas, this is all leading up to, the solid things in Texas winemaking. When we know what we are really good at, we are going to protect that legally. And that's what all of these European countries have done. They have protected what they know that they're good at, what they have had consistency with, and what's protecting their reputation around the world. You know what to expect. Texas has experimentation. This does mean that when you get a bottle of Texas wine, you don't necessarily know what you're getting, but it also means that we can experiment with Blanc Dubois and create delicious wine like what you're drinking now, if you're drinking the Blanc Dubois. It also means that we can decide to ditch Blanc Dubois at any time, and we don't have to use it if we don't want to. But after this field trip with Jim Comas that Clay Roots set up, I think that hybrid grapes are going to maybe be a bigger part of William Chris Vineyards. Again, I don't know. This is all, it's in the brains of Chris and Bill. It's what they decide to do with it. And I do know that we are growing hybrid grapes on site at William Chris Vineyards that we haven't made into wine yet. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens with those. There was a wine that Jim Comas poured us that the name was like SP-01359. It was, it hasn't been named yet. It tasted like Nebbiolo. It was super tannic. It was really, really aromatic, cherry fruited, rose fruited, complex. It was deep in color. It was absolutely beautiful. I couldn't believe that they had created something like that. And it wasn't even named yet. So this is where the excitement comes in. Yes, we have new legislation for Texas wines, but we don't have restriction on what we're able to put in the bottle. So if some hybrid grapes pop up and they're absolutely delicious and they're winter hardy and they're Pierce's disease resistant and they resist a bunch of other diseases in Texas, we are able to work with them. But this is a very new field. Now, the cool thing is that Blanc Dubois and Black Spanish, which is a red wine grape, those are both in the top 10 planted grape varieties for wine in Texas, along with Cabernet Sauvignon, Tannat, Merveille, and Viognier, Tempranillo, other grapes like that. Blanc Dubois and Black Spanish are representing hybrid grapes in the top 10. Outside of that, hybrid grapes largely aren't used. And Black Spanish, think of it as having similar characters to Blanc Dubois. It can be a little foxy, funky, but it's being used for port-style wines, sweet fortified wines. It has such flavor intensity and it has such dark color and deep tannins that in a dessert wine, it is completely rewarding. And if you're thinking about the Black Jacques in your head and thinking that, hey, William Chris makes a Black Jacques dessert wine, yes, it is made from Black Spanish, which is also known as Lenoir, which is also known as Jacques. So both of those grapes are representing hybrid grapes in Texas, and I think that they're representing the future of hybrid grapes in Texas. All these grapes need is more experimentation. And certainly there are bad reviews for Blanc Dubois out there. Blanc Dubois can be foxy. It can be really, really off-putting. It can be really tart and really low in alcohol. But when you have intelligent winemakers who are dedicated to working with what Texas wants to work with, then you can have reward like what's in your glass tonight. And it all takes creative vineyard management and open, innovative winemaking. And I'll shout out to Tony Ophil, who is our head winemaker, and his fantastic winemaking team. They are investing time in working with this grape that doesn't have a lot of history to base off of. So, the grapes that we're harvesting that are new to the Texas wine scene, we are having to figure out how to treat these. But that's the beauty of the William Chris mission. It's not just the next 10 years. If it was, we would just work with Vitis vinifera varieties and we would work with only the most popular ones that we know that are going to sell. We are dedicated to the next 100 years. And this includes looking around for more hybrid grape varieties that will be very successful in areas of Texas that the Vitis vinifera species just can't. And that's closer to the Gulf. If you remember that map that I posted up, that red area that is a big threat for Pierce's disease, that's about half of Texas. If we didn't have that room to play with, you could basically cut the state of Texas in half, and that's how much wine growing area that we have to work with. But grapes like Blanc Dubois and Black Spanish are allowing us to use the entire state. And that means we have so much diversity and we have so much playroom. And that's obviously what I'm excited about with the journey of William Chris. And this is why I continue to experience all of their wines. And I'll admit I certainly had a very judgmental look at Blanc Dubois when I first started. I was not into a grape that was an American hybrid that sounded like it came from Europe but didn't. And I didn't mention this. It was actually created in Florida to be resistant to moisture and Pierce's disease. Now that I have learned more about William Chris and tasted Blanc Dubois from some of the 20 wineries around Texas that are using Blanc Dubois, I see why it is present. This grape was named for a French woman who became a citizen of the US. So it is very much 100% a US product. And that's where my passion to this conversation comes in. Jim Comas and Clay Roop have opened my eyes to the potential of Texas with hybrid grapes. And this is why you should start your Texas wine journey now, because you get to see hybrid grapes come up in the ranks. And hopefully we won't be 99% European grape varieties in 10, 20, 30 years. Maybe it'll go down to 90%. We'll have 10% hybrid grapes that are being extremely successful and delicious and that will define Texas. That AgriLife Extension program for A&M is doing beautiful work, and they deserve to be celebrated. And I mean, I know my opinion doesn't mean much, but I think everyone should go out and find their hybrid grapes and start doing some experimentation, because you will see a ton of reward. You'll also be a part of history. You'll see what Texas creates and is 100% Texas. Because even though these two wines are 100% Texas grapes, they came from somewhere else first. But these hybrid grapes, they will come from Texas originally. And it's just a beautiful thing. All right, I'm going to see if y'all had any questions. I've been talking for a while, haven't I? Catherine drinking some Zinfandel. That's awesome. Is it William Chris Zinfandel? We're pouring that into the tasting room right now from that awesome vintage 2017. And Brian, you may have asked this before I answered the question, but yes, William Chris uses black Spanish grapes in the, I said Black Jacques too, but that's not right. It's actually the Jacques. So we make 3 dessert style wines at William Chris. These are little known. They're not made in a high quantity, and they're made in half bottles. I love these. We make a white wine called Cibola. We make Black Jacques 2, which is a madderized wine, where you take white wine, you crush it, you make wine from it, and then you fortify it and leave it out in the Texas sun for 2 years, and you let it bake in the barrel. That's the Black Jacques 2. So that comes from white wine grapes, although it looks almost red in the glass because of that cooking process. And then we make the Jacques, and this is from the grape Jacques or Lenoir or Black Spanish. So that is 100% American hybrid grapes in that bottle. And we've made a port style wine out of this. And all that means is we've taken red wine grapes, we've macerated them so that all the color and tannin comes out. We've made a wine into it, fortified it with brandy so that it's high in alcohol, like 22%. It's high up there. And we've bottled it in a half bottle because it's that higher alcohol. These often have extra sugar in them, but we don't add sugar. What we do is when we make the wine from the black Spanish grape, we stop the fermentation partway through. So there's some alcohol made and some sugar left over. It's all black Spanish sugar. We fortified it with brandy, and then you have alcohol, sweetness, and extra alcohol from brandy all bottled together into a delicious deep red dessert wine. And this is a traditional style made in Portugal. In Porto. So we are emulating that style with an American hybrid grape. It's delicious. This is a common practice across Texas. This is what Black Spanish is becoming known for, is those port style wines. Sherry, yeah, you've never tasted our dessert wines. We have the Cibola for purchase on the website right now, but Black Jacques 2 and Jacques, oh my gosh. That Black Jacques 2 is very near and dear to my heart. 2 years of baking in the Texas sun is, for whatever reason, ultimate Texas-ness to me. That's, the Texas sun being a part of the wine is what makes it beautiful. Christopher, I'm going to try and answer your question. Christopher asked, the Foxy that I'm talking about is an off-putting smell, ? Last time you had the Blanc Dubois, it did not smell good to me. So remember the last 4 weeks we've been opening William Chris wines. I smell them and I say there's a little bit of funkiness on that. Some of this is just the winemaking style, because we have a very old world, low intervention style of winemaking. It means that a lot of our wines have a little funk on top that's protecting the freshness of the wine. It just needs to blow off. So perhaps decant your Blanc Dubois. See what happens. It might be absolutely delicious. It might take away that funkiness. The Foxy that I'm talking about is generally, but general is not a good way to put it. Some people don't like it. Some people like it. We talked about Merved being very gamey and smoky. I think people that like that about Merved may be attracted to this so-called Foxy smell in grapes like Blanc Dubois or other American hybrid grapes. a lot of time it's the winemaking style, and there's a technique that they're using in Texas for Blanc Dubois, and that is to have the foliage of the grapes kind of partially shield the grapes from the full sun so they get indirect sunlight. This helps slow down the ripening process so the grapes can hang on the vine for a little bit longer. And with that extra hang time, that foxiness goes away. And that's because the foxiness is potentially coming from pyrazines. And remember I said Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc both have pyrazines in them. And pyrazines, when they're a chemical compound found in a wine grape, they ripen out of the wine. So in hot places, you won't get pyrazine compounds in Cabernet or Sauvignon Blanc. Those pyrazines taste like bell pepper, tomatillo, and jalapeno. These are funky flavors to go with very fresh Sauvignon Blanc or very fruity Cabernet Sauvignon. It may just be that Blanc Dubois needs very specific vineyard management in order to release that foxiness from it. But the presence of Blanc Dubois in Texas, how widely grown it is, tells me that it is absolutely possible to release this grape of the foxiness. And I won't say that about all hybrid grapes. But that's definitely something to watch for. It's a signifier that you're drinking a hybrid grape, is it has that little edge to it. And I think that some people really like that, and some winemakers know how to take care of that. It just depends what the trend is at the time. And I think we'll find more ways to deal with that and be successful with it. Christopher, have you had the Blanc Dubois since then when it was not foxy, or it kind of changed, or was that the last time that you had it? Let me see. Oh, Melanie, good question. She's asking if tasting the Black Shock is a special tasting at William Chris. So that's a great question, because at William Chris, we change our tasting menu very often. But since we only make these 3 dessert style wines, and we make them in such a small quantity, and they're not what define William Chris. They're like that fun side project that, us as wine geeks make mostly for ourselves and our family and the people who get to be in on the secret. We typically always have dessert wines open for you. So next time you go in, do your tasting and then ask for the dessert wines. We will absolutely pop open a bottle and share it with you, because our inner wine geeks get really excited when you ask us about dessert wine. The palate of Texas is going largely from sweet wines to dry wines, and this is the palate of the entire world as well. So dry wine is what we make. It's what we're known for, mostly dry red wines. That little bit of white wine, rosé, and dessert wine that we make, that's just the extra fun that we get to have, but is definitely not what defines the majority of what we do. So no, you wouldn't get it in a tasting automatically, and it will never be on a tasting menu, a standard tasting at William Chris, because we pour what defines us. That doesn't mean we don't make some killer dessert wines, and I highly encourage you guys to ask for the dessert wines when you come into William Chris. You will seriously excite some people, including our winemakers, our tasting room ambassadors, our educational director, myself, Chris, Bill, everybody. We get to really enjoy these, especially around Thanksgiving time. That is the time to pick up the Jacquez. Is delicious. And Francisco, thank you for the correction. I spoke about it wrong. So again, the Cibola is our dessert white wine. The Black Jacques 2 is our madderized white wine that's been baked in the Texas sun for 2 years. And the Jacquez is made from Black Spanish and is our port-style red wine. All right. Just had no more questions. That's awesome. Let me see if I've missed anything. We talked about Blanc Dubois and Black Spanish and Champanelle and Pierce's disease. Black Spanish is really present in Brazil right now, which is super cool. So this is not just a Texas exclusive thing. This is something that's happening in coastal regions around the world. This is exciting. It means that the word is spreading about the excellent quality of these grapes. It's basically, to me, an endorsement for these hybrid grapes. And I'm really sad that I'm not sharing some hybrid wine with y'all right now. So just to summarize, after Prohibition, Texas took a huge hit. Before Prohibition, American grape varieties were the thing. After Prohibition, we suffered a long time, longer than the rest of the U.S., especially in the Texas High Plains area. We devoted to other agriculture. But as these restrictions loosened and Texas started devoting in diversifying their crop, they started planting wine grapes. And when they replanted after Prohibition, they planted European grape varieties, that Vitis vinifera species. And that was in the 60s and 70s that we decided to diversify this. So it is only very recently that hybrid grapes have started to come back up. So this is a really early talk about something that is not yet really widely practiced in Texas. There are 150 acres of Blanc Dubois planted in Texas and 20 plus wineries using Blanc Dubois. This is why I think it's important to talk about this. And I want to instill in each of you that these grapes are not mudbloods. They are respectable hybrid grapes that are bred for a certain reason and have gone through a huge amount of testing in places like the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. They've been worked with for a very long time before they were put in the bottle for you to drink. And our winemakers are brave enough to work with them. And so are many other winemakers in Texas. That's what's exciting about hybrid grapes. Also, new legislation in Texas. We are figuring out what we are known for, and it's spreading. So hybrid grapes will catch. And if you go out there and look more about hybrid grapes, you're going to see a lot about foxiness and how it's not worth growing hybrid grapes. But the people that wrote those articles did not go and have that field trip with Jim Comas. They did not get to hear what he said. And I encourage everyone to find a way to go out and experience the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. I think that going in there and talking to the people who are doing the work there, not just with wine grapes, but other plants across Texas, they are truly the most devoted people to Texas terroir and the science of Texas since T.V. Munson, who did that beautiful work in the late 1800s. All right, that's what I have for you. If you didn't get to watch the last 5 episodes of Summer Sippin', you can still go back and watch all of them. And I encourage you to, just because they were a lot of fun for me to put together. They contained a lot of information. And as we do this series, we're going to kind of grow into new topics. This next 2 weeks, we're drinking the Artist Blend, the 2019, and this has a beautiful story to it. So if you know someone who might enjoy the Artist Blend, because it's kind of a cult series, this Artist Blend. The artwork changes every year. Go get them a bottle and encourage them to join. The week after that, we're going to drink Mary Ruth, which is the best white wine ever. But both of those weeks, we're going to keep talking about grape varieties. And this is a tough conversation. I'm glad to have this practice talking about it. And then the next 4-week pack will be available soon. So I will let you know when that happens. But otherwise, toss in any more questions that you might have, and I'll answer them next week. But until then, that's what I have for you. And I'm really sad I'm not going to be able to talk to y'all until next week. But I can't wait to have y'all back. I enjoy sitting here after I've turned off my camera and reading all of the comments that I didn't get to. So thank you for being a part of this, and share it on your Facebook page if you'd like to spread the word and encourage more people to join. Let's see. Lane's forgotten her Blanc Dubois. That's okay. Open and re-listen tomorrow. That sounds great. Lane, don't worry about it. As long as you have something in the glass, I'm happy. Something, wine-like would be preferable, but I don't care what you're drinking. I'm not drinking the Blanc Dubois, so don't feel any shame. Rachel, yes, there's a lot more science than you ever thought. And I'm sorry if some of these are really, really intense and scientific and, chemistry heavy and geography heavy. It's what's exciting to me. The the amount that I learn about wine just teaches me that I will never be done learning about wine. And I hope that's something that you can excite in with me, is that there's a lot more to this. If y'all ever want some really intense classes, let me know. We have an educational director. I'm here educating as well. So if you want intensive classes on any of these topics, tell us what you want to be learning about next. But we will continue to get really nerdy for the next 6 to 8 weeks during the summer. All right. I'm going to pop off. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope that you've enjoyed this information. I will see y'all next week. Cheers to saving this wine for a year and finally getting to open it and taste it with y'all. I will see y'all next week.